Okay, welcome to the Unbearables podcast. I'm Brandon Ruiz, and I'm here with
Phil Wood
and Jack Cowart.
All right, so Jack actually saw some interesting news today regarding some potential Bulls draft prospects.
A few days ago, Michael Porter Jr. was pictured on a beach with Chandler Hutchinson, and I know that, Brandon, you've been a big fan of those two coming to the Bulls together, so just want to share your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy about it. Hey, if they want to come to Chicago, that's one step in the right direction. Because, I mean, you want a team, you want players to want to come to your team, and I don't know exactly why they would want to be on the Bulls or why they have, because Michael Porter Jr. has shown, like, I guess an affection towards the Bulls. He wears, like, Bulls hats and everything. He shows that he loves the team. But if they like us, then that's cool, because I definitely want their talents here, because as I said before, if one of them pan out, we get both of them. If two of them pan out, we're in good shape going forward, because wing players are what we need, and if we have two of them, we're in good hands.
Yeah, I agree. And not to get too speculative, but it's been reported that Porter Jr. has declined to share his medical records with a few of the other teams. I think the Hawks and the Magic were some of those, so maybe it's possible that Porter really does just want to come to Chicago.
Wow. Okay.
I think a big thing about like guys wanting to come to Chicago is like the way, you have the greatest player of all time played here, and you have those 6 rings. You want to be able to like expand upon that, because once you do that for this type of city, this sports city, or even if you make it to the playoffs or get close, this city loves you then. And you have the one of the best fan bases in the league, and I think that's a big thing when talking about drafting guys. Because if your fan base doesn't like the guy's not going to... He might not succeed as well compared to other guys who the fan base does like.
I would say that's also why a lot of really good players leave small market teams, because like they don't feel like they're getting the love that they feel like they deserve. And hey, if Michael Porter Jr. and Chandler Hutchinson want to win some championships here, that would be good for the Chicago Bulls. I mean, it would be a big deal, because the last person to really be the driving force is Michael Jordan. So when you're the next one up and next one in line, you're going to be put on a high pedestal, especially in terms of like just sports greatness and with the city.
Definitely.
And it's not even just like winning titles, it's getting there or getting close. That means a lot to a sports city like Chicago. Like if you see New York a few years ago when they would get close, but they'd never really get far enough. The city still loved those teams, and they showed a lot of affection towards those teams. I think Chicago's the same kind of way with their basketball team, their sports teams in general. And I think you do that, and you become loved by the city, and you get endorsement deals that you don't get in other places. And I mean, being drafted to big market teams is a really big thing for a lot of guys, especially when those teams end up in the lottery. They attract those guys more, so they want to work out for them more and show off to them more. And I think Michael Porter Jr. did share his medical records with the Bulls.
Yes.
He's one of the teams they did share.
Wow.
And, I mean, that means a lot when you think about it. And Chandler Hutchinson, I haven't heard a lot about him, but from what Brandon says, having him like Chicago is a great thing, too. Because if he's going to end up being a decent player, even not even like a great player, like a bench role, a guy who's, like, good, that's perfect enough for me. And I think loving Chicago is a great thing. So being here a lot is also good.
I do also think that could potentially help with recruiting purposes, because if like other players who are looking to potentially go to the Chicago Bulls, if they see that maybe they're going to get Michael Porter Jr. especially, and maybe if they like Chandler Hutchinson, then they might actually come to the Bulls. And recruiting is very important. I mean, just ask Chris Paul. I mean, he's trying to get LeBron right now.
I think it's great that he's trying to get LeBron right now, because I think if he waited too long, it might have been out of his hands by then. I think like the not counting the Cavs, there's 3 teams who have a real shot to get LeBron James, and that's the Los Angeles Lakers, the Houston Rockets, and the Philadelphia 76ers. And 2 of those teams are in the West, and I think LeBron leaves the East after this year, because I think like the Rockets give him the best chance to beat the Warriors, and playing in LA is the market he's wanted to play in since the beginning of his career. And those are like the 2 biggest reasons. And the only reason I think he'd go to Philly is just to play with those young guys. So I think the biggest advantage right now is Houston, and I think that's where he'll end up going right now, and I think it works out a lot better, especially with the way Chris Paul's recruiting him already. And James Harden is too. Yeah, I saw that report as well.
I don't think you should count out LeBron sticking with the Cavs. I mean, the teams you said are probably more likely, but the Cavs aren't dead in the water. I think they still have the 8th pick. They can still make some trades, and LeBron he likes the city of Cleveland. He came back for a reason, but I just want to say I don't think that LeBron is going to leave the East, because even though you're right, the Rockets do give him the best chance to win titles, I think the final streak that he has going is a significant part of his legacy. And yes, rings are important. Rings mean a lot, but LeBron's best path to the finals will always be in the East. And you never know. He beat the Warriors once. He could do it again in the finals.
Yeah, especially on the Celtics.
Ooh.
I mean, imagine if that were to actually happen. That would be so insane. But I think if you want him to stay in the East, he's not going to stay with the Cavs.
I think Philly's a good spot.
Philly's a really good spot. I think with the way he's played in Cleveland this year, I don't know how well it would work for Philly fans, because they love Ben Simmons and they love their Joel Embiid, and LeBron coming there and running the point every single time up and down the floor. That's not what Philly wants.
I think a very key point, though, of all this is that LeBron specifically said he doesn't want to do that anymore. He wants to play off the ball a lot more. So to me, it feels like maybe he does want Ben Simmons to be the point guard for him. Maybe he wants someone to take a little bit more of the workload off, because as we've seen in some parts of this Cavs-Celtics series that just passed, like, he did play exceptionally well off the ball. And I think he could actually really, really help that 76ers team. And if that's what he wants to do, I think the 76ers would be a very good spot for him. But also, I'm just saying, like I said, what if he went to the Celtics? But, like, just imagine Kyrie trying to run away from LeBron. and then LeBron finding a way to meet Kyrie again. It would be ridiculous.
But you were talking about like playing off the ball being a thing LeBron wants to do now. That's Chris Paul's biggest pitch. That's the Rockets' biggest pitch. James Harden can take over games, and you watch Chris Paul sit outside on those perimeters to be able to. The second James Harden is done, he's not completely taking over the game again. He's coming back in, and they're both playing a valuable part. And if LeBron wants to play off the ball, Houston is the perfect place, because you can get tired, you can sit for a few minutes, and you don't have to worry, because you have Eric Gordon off the bench, or you have James Harden running the show still, or you still have Chris Paul going. They'd be able to take turns, and it wouldn't be like the Thunder situation with their taking turns, because that was horrendous. I think it's more of just taking turns taking the ball up, and taking turns being on the perimeter, and I think I think LeBron's 3-point shooting would improve in Houston. He would take more shots from out there because he wouldn't be taking the ball up and driving every time. I think Houston is the ideal situation if he wants to win titles. And like Jack was saying, that's not what matters to him right now, but I think it should, and I think it's his best chance to beat the Warriors. So if he's playing off the ball and beating the Warriors, then why not?
I really feel that when you look at the Rockets, a really big problem for them, though, is that no one went in to score when everyone was missing on the threes. And I do think the Rockets would be a good place for LeBron, because he's shown that he can play off the ball. But also, if you're looking at James Harden potentially having to take pressure off LeBron, like, that's great. But the biggest player that took pressure off the Rockets was Chris Paul, and not James Harden in the postseason. That's why they struggled so much without him. Because when they went into slumps, and when the third quarter Warriors showed up, like, Chris Paul was able to keep them in the game and keep them competitive, keep their leads intact, or at least bring them back above the Warriors. So I think that LeBron, he would bring the Rockets that whole aspect that they need, the inside scoring aspect, because a lot of the times they just kept on chucking up threes, and I think LeBron is too smart of a basketball player to make that mistake. Because while LeBron's shooting has gotten better all throughout his career, he still isn't a great three-point shooter. He's a good one. He's definitely a good one. But I think that he would fit really perfectly in that system. I just think that, going along with what Jack said, staying in the East would give him the easiest path to the finals. And I think he actually really cares about beating the Warriors, specifically the Warriors, in the finals. So I know he would still beat them to get there, but I think beating them in the finals means more to him. And I think there is a really good chance that he stays in the East just because, I mean, making it there, if you don't even make it there, then you can't win a championship. And he's clearly shown that he knows how to make it there in the East.
Yeah, I think if LeBron went to the Rockets and lost to the Warriors in the conference finals, probably his legacy would take a much bigger hit than it would if he just missed the finals in the East. But I agree with Brandon about the Warriors being an important part of LeBron's legacy. He recently said that they were the best team he ever faced, and then they added Kevin Durant. And in that regard, I think it's kind of sad with thinking about the NBA as a whole, that when talking about LeBron's most likely destinations, we're creating another super team, just like Kevin Durant did. I'm personally not a big fan of super teams, but I know other people might not necessarily feel that way.
See, I don't have a problem with the building of super teams because what happens is when it first started really with that Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, Rajon Rondo Celtics, it started to happen more frequently. But now, in this current day and age, there's enough superstars to build more than one. It's different when there's one super team dominating the entire NBA, a.k.a. what Jordan's Bulls did. They stopped countless players from getting rings. I think in this NBA, there's multiple super teams, and they all have a chance to get far enough and to win a finals. And I think with the addition of these transcendent young players like we have seen in this past draft, there's a few other big threes that are forming not out of guys signing or wanting to be on these super teams. It's forming by accident. They're forming bonds of young teams that are resemblant of the way you had, like Larry Bird's Celtics. Most of those guys were drafted to that Celtics team, and they played on that Celtics team, and I think that's happening a lot more in today's NBA.
I think there is also a really big difference when you're going to talk about Jordan's Bulls, because, I don't think anyone was regarding Dennis Rodman as Kevin Durant or LeBron James.
I'm regarding Dennis Rodman as the best rebounder of all time and one of the best defenders of all time.
I mean, you could say he's the best rebounder of all time, and that'd be a good argument. But there's also this guy, Wilt Chamberlain, who would get 50 rebounds in a game.
And Dennis Rodman, I'm pretty sure, has the highest rebounds per game average of any current day, current league player, and I think overall he's the better rebounder, and I think adding Dennis Rodman to that team was the only reason they won the second three-peat.
Well, I don't know if that's necessarily true, but I'm just saying, I was just pointing out that there's a difference between what you would consider a super team then and a super team now, because they weren't adding, Michael didn't go hey man, the Lakers look really good. Man, they're doing a really good job over there. I'm going to have to go head over there and play with them. So it is a little different now, and that's why I don't like it necessarily, because it does take out a little bit of the competitiveness between the superstars of the league and the legends of the league. But you're right in some regards where now the players do have more of an option of where they want to go, so it could bring up that same competitiveness, but they have to wait till free agency to do that, which kind of sucks because a lot of players will be looking at their current team well, I don't want to play here, so what's the point of me even trying? Paul George with the Pacers, where he just kind of gave up on them. He did kind of give up on them, but that last year he was with them.
Yeah, I think Kevin Durant did exactly what you just said. He looked at the Warriors, said, oh, they look pretty good, I'll go join them. Now, I personally don't blame him for that. If you want to get rings, that's a good way to do it. But I think it sort of discredits what Phil said about there being enough room to create super teams, because we've had the same finals matchup for 4 years in a row. If you want to consider the Westbrook, Paul George, Carmelo Anthony, Steven Adams, if you want to consider them a super team, I disagree because they haven't come close. The Timberwolves with Cat, Butler, Wiggins haven't come close. The Rockets came close, I'll admit, but they're not quite a super team in the same way that the LeBron Heat or the Warriors have been.
I think, the Timberwolves haven't had enough room to grow. Cat and Wiggins are still way too young to be able to be considered superstars on a super team.
Yeah, you're right. Give it a few more years.
And Melo's too old. He was a cancer in the locker room. I don't count them as super teams because I think there were certain things going towards that team that prevented them from being there. But you have to think about in Philadelphia, the way that when Markelle Fultz plays well, they're going to have 3 guys averaging 20+, a fourth averaging at about 19 with Dario Saric, who's way underrated in this league.
Agreed.
You have to think about the Celtics and the way they drafted Brown and Tatum, the way they drafted Terry Rozier, and they have all these good players. That's like a super, super team. And then you think about the Warriors. They drafted almost all of their players and signed one. They signed one guy, and I don't think Kevin Durant genuinely...
They also signed Sean Livingston.
Oh my
and
God!
Andre
You know
Iguodala.
what I mean. I'm saying they
He's a
signed
very
one
important part of their
superstar.
team.
They signed one superstar that put them over from a good championship team to a super team. And I think with the super team thing in today's NBA, like, you know, if DeMarcus Cousins and Anthony Davis get one more guy, super team. If I'm trying to think of in the West, there's a lot of teams that are like right on the border of regular team and super team, and they all add one more guy because there's a few teams with a plethora of guys, like the Celtics. And the Celtics are going to make moves this offseason that are going to turn teams into super teams.
Part of me, though, wants to go back to a point that you brought about Cat and Wiggins. So why are Cat and Wiggins, you have played more years in the NBA than most of the Sixers like squad, but you said like they're a super team already. It's okay, but why is it not okay to have the same expectations of Cat and Wiggins when they have had more experience than both of those players, Embiid and I forgot his name, Simmons. Why is it not okay to put them to that same standard? Which in reality, in all actuality, they should be put at a higher standard because they have had way more responsibility and way more minutes.
So with what you're saying right now,
and way more NBA coaching. Sorry.
With what you're saying now, I think the point about Wiggins and Towns that I made is because they got put into a situation where they have never played with Jimmy Butler before. I understand that Simmons and Embiid never played before, but they've also spent the past 2 years knowing each other and talking to each other and working out together. And you have to think that they had better chemistry than Jimmy Butler coming in out of nowhere and taking away probably one of their better teammates in Chris Dunn. And they loved Chris Dunn. Those two specifically loved Chris Dunn and Zach LaVine. You know, Zach LaVine was a very big part, and he scored a lot of points for those Timberwolves teams. And I think when you took that away, their chemistry plummeted, and plus all the signings they had, their chemistry was really, really out of whack. So I can't really consider them a super team because they're so young and they didn't have time to grow into their team together.
I sort of agree. I think the original point you were trying to make was that Wiggins and Cat should be held to a higher standard because they've had more experience, but the fact is that they're just not as good as Simmons and Embiid. So when we're talking about creating super teams, LeBron going to Philly is much more parity damaging than LeBron going to the Wolves.
I mean, if LeBron were to go to the Wolves, I mean, him and Jimmy Butler, would be a great duo. I'd love to see that happen. Like, think about that. Defensively, Jimmy Butler's one of the two guys who can really stop LeBron. But I'll get off that. If LeBron goes to the Wolves, he creates a super team because Karl Anthony Towns would be able to thrive more with a LeBron James type of guy on his team because LeBron distributes the ball more, and Jimmy Butler was just taking shots from both of them, and that's a big thing with their team this season too. But if LeBron goes to the Sixers, it also creates it adds to a super team, I believe, in the sense of you add one of the two greatest players of all time.
I don't know if the Sixers can be considered a super team when they got beat by the Boston Celtics that didn't have Gordon Hayward and Kyrie Irving.
That's fair.
The Boston Celtics had Jason Tatum, who was dropping 20 points every other game in that series. Yeah, he's the rookie who's probably one of the...
rookie, not the rookie. I said he's a rookie.
I think he's the rookie of the year. I think he should be the rookie. If it was going off of overall full season, it should be entire year. It should... I wish it was an entire year because Jason Tatum quite obviously deserves the award right now more than both of those two players. Those players being Mitchell and Simmons. And I think if he had gained more media attention and played more minutes without Kyrie on his team in the regular season, he would have won the award. And I think he's the best player out of the three.
I feel like, though, Donovan Mitchell definitely had more responsibility than Jason Tatum did on his team. like Jason Tatum had Al Horford and Jaylen Brown and Marcus Morris. There's a ton of players that came to help him, and Brad Stevens. So I get what you're saying, but I don't think that Celtics team is a super team without Kyrie Irving or Gordon Hayward, just because there's no player on that team right now. Currently, they could develop into one. I think Jason Tatum could, what I'm about to say, as a player that can close out a game. A player who can wave off everybody like Kyrie Irving can and say, it's time for me to take control. I'm going to win you guys this game. That's the one thing they needed to beat this Cavs team. They would have won the series in a lot faster, not even if they had Gordon Hayward, if they just had Jason Tatum. But one thing I want to bring up actually right now, since we're talking about the Celtics, is that the Celtics are interested in Mo Bamba, and I wonder what aspect that he can add to the Celtics team.
Well, the Celtics lack defensive big man.
Yeah, I'm a big
like
Mo
I said
Bamba
that
fan.
simply.
I think he would fit really well with them, especially with Horford aging. But when we were talking about this earlier, and we said when the Celtics say that they like a guy, it's possible that they're just bluffing, or it's a sign to other teams that, hey, this guy's really good, because the Celtics have been drafting out of their minds lately.
And I think the Celtics drafting out of their mind lately just shows their scouting staff is really good, and Brad Stevens and their GMs are probably some of the smartest people in basketball right now. And I think I think they're going to continue the bluffing thing from last year. Don't get me wrong, Mo Bamba's good, but I think Boston has better intentions, and they're trying to get guys to prevent them from doing something or creating a trade to get someone else to draft him just to spite the Celtics, when in the long run, the Celtics want somebody else.
Or they want Mo Bamba for rim protection because they're going to be facing LeBron James every year in the playoffs.
Or they're going to face LeBron James in the finals because he's going to go to the West.
It is possible, but I'm just saying that if you look at, Mo Bamba, he's not going to obviously be able to stop LeBron James, but he is a rim protector. He does get a lot of blocks, and that's something that the Celtics needed, especially going against LeBron James. Any team going against LeBron James needs a rim protector because LeBron can score from a lot of places, but his favorite place to score is around the rim.
I think that's also a good point. Like, they could just not be bluffing, and they really need him. I think if their rim protection was better, they could have stopped that Cavs team a lot easier. And I think if they want to improve on their rim protection, I would think go out and sign somebody. But what they're doing right now with drafting Mo Bamba might take a little longer to get like a real rim protecting prospect. But I think it would help their overall rim defense. I don't think it's like the answer for next season, but I think it'd be the answer in the long run.
Yeah, if I had to guess, I'd say it's probably a bluff like they did with Fultz and Tatum last year, because the Celtics are in win-now mode, and Bamba's sort of a project. It might take him a couple of years to get good, I feel.
I don't think they need him to. The thing is, though, I don't think it'll take him a lot to have his defense be good, like his blocking ability. He might get posted up really easily in this NBA, even though a lot of the centers and power forwards are a lot weaker than they used to be.
Mm-hmm.
But his rim protecting ability in terms of like blocking and everything, I think he'll be fine with that. And that's all they really need, because they're going to have scoring power from Kyrie Irving, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Gordon Hayward, and still Al Horford. And Marcus Morris, let's not forget, he can shoot three-pointers. He can actually score in a lot of different ways. So he might be just what they need.
I think if he's what they need, then they need Al Horford to play the 4, and they're going to trade people away because they need the scoring down low, and he's not the ideal scorer right now. Al Horford is the scorer they need down low. He's not the defender they need down low. So they're going to have to move people if they want to play all of those guys at the same time, because you have to think about it. Jason Tatum needs a place to play. Gordon Hayward still needs a place to play because Jason Tatum. Jaylen Brown would need a place to play unless you're going to start Horford and Bamba.
You don't have to start Bamba. You don't have to start a lot of these players, especially because they're still on the rookie contracts. You don't have to pay them. You have to develop them. So Mo Bamba can come off the bench. That's fine. That's why you take him now instead of waiting to take a big later in the future and wait to develop him. You take the big now, so you develop him. So when Al Horford it's his time to sit down, they have Mo Bamba in the back seat ready to say, okay, it's my turn to take a step forward. Like, obviously, if they would have had a healthy Gordon Hayward, when Jason Tatum would have taken his full step forward at probably the right time, he would look a lot better because he had more time to study and mature, and when he takes that role, he'll be in another stage of his career. But if you take Mo Bamba now, when he actually has to take that starting role, then he'll be at that stage of his career when he's ready for the starting role.
Running off of your point, I think drafting Mo Bamba now and having him with Al Horford, who is a very versatile scorer, would help Mo Bamba like significantly. If they're doing what you're saying and not starting him, having him behind Al Horford and having him learn from Al Horford, a veteran big, a big who's been in the league for a while, who's going to continue helping them, I think that makes perfect sense because they'll be able to, they'll be like, oh, he can play defense, but he can't score for like 2 to 3 years. And then like his fourth year, they're like, oh, crap, why is Mo Bamba scoring on us? That's because he learned from Al Horford. And I think that a veteran presence is a big thing in today's NBA, and I think learning from veterans is really helpful, which is why I wish the Bulls kept Tony Allen a while ago to teach defense to these younger guys. They didn't. And I was like, oh, that's bad. But, I mean, having Mo Bamba learn from Al Horford and even having Al Horford learn from Mo Bamba, defensive, offensive trading there, I guess, that would be not detrimental because that's the wrong word I was about to say. It would be very valuable to both players.
Yeah, I think that would help the Celtics look to the future in terms of beating LeBron because they were missing something, like you said, rim protection. And in terms of beating LeBron, some of the other teams that LeBron beat, sorry, I say LeBron. What I really mean is the Cavs. Some of the teams that the Cavs beat this year were also lacking some of those things.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at what Stephen A. was saying about, because everyone's saying right now that this is LeBron's greatest accomplishment, bringing a team to the finals. Not winning the finals, which he has done before, which you would arguably say would like just be one of the greatest accomplishments you can make, and I don't know, like the NBA in a single season, which he's done 3 times. But Stephen A. Smith basically said that when he played the Pacers, he played a bunch of novices, which is true. Now, they did play very well, but regardless, they were led by Victor Oladipo, who isn't like a rookie or anything. Like, he has years in the league, but this was his first year where he had to be a leader, and he did a pretty good job of it. But they also played the Toronto Raptors, a team that constantly falters to LeBron every single season. Stephen A. Adams called them petrified puppies. And I think that's a reasonable comp. Like, they look scared playing LeBron. They just let him drive on them all day. He kept on doing the same thing. He's like, well, I'm going to drive to the left, and then they can't stop me. Which, it's hard to stop LeBron. I'm not saying you can do it, but I'm just saying it looked like they had no chance. And he also talked about the Boston Celtics and talked about how they're missing Gordon Hayward and Kyrie Irving. So to say that this is his greatest accomplishment, I'm not sure. Now, if he beats the Warriors, I would say it's his greatest accomplishment. But to just make it to the finals and he's had a little bit of help with just luck, I don't know.
Yeah, when Stephen A. was saying those things about the teams that the Cavs have beat this year, he was talking about how that might impact LeBron's legacy going forward. And to be honest, I don't think it will. I don't think people will remember, for the most part, that LeBron had an easy path. I think what Stephen A. said will be a counterpoint to that.
I think I don't think this is close to the most important thing he's done or like the most valuable thing he's done in his career right now. I think 2016 was the best thing he's done in his career so far, winning that title. I understand that the Warriors were kind of banged up, but he still beat a very, very good team, and I think that was way more important to his legacy than this year. And I also think he got lucky beating the Pacers. I think if the Pacers had
yeah, they almost beat him.
Right. If the Pacers had a little more end game finishing, if Victor Oladipo was a little older and more mature, they would have beat the Cavs.
They didn't even need that. The only reason why the Pacers didn't beat the Cavs is because one game in the first quarter, Oladipo got into foul trouble, and he couldn't play the whole first quarter. And the Cavs, they broke loose that first quarter because Oladipo wasn't out there. If he was out there and just would have scored a little, it was a close game. They only lost, I think, by like 6 points. They would have won. I am positive having Oladipo on the floor would have at least had them score at least 6 more points.
I just think that moving on to the Raptors, I think it's impossible for the Raptors to make it to the NBA Finals.
They're cursed.
I think it's because like there was like those 2 bad Jurassic Park movies that weren't as good as the first one. That's why they can't make it. It cursed them. No, but I'm saying I actually think they can't get past a certain point because the team's still a little young as a franchise, and I think the way they're set up right now is not for the current NBA, and I understand they're better at three-point shooting this current season, but they still faltered to what they used to be the second they hit the playoffs. The second they hit the playoffs, it was Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan every single time down the floor. And that's not how you need to play basketball in this NBA. And that's the reason it's so easy for LeBron to beat the Raptors. I think it's easy for anyone to beat the Raptors before the end of after the end of the regular season. Any playoff team can beat the Raptors. No matter what seed, no matter who's on their team, they will beat the Raptors.
That might be a bit of a hot take. I mean, I don't mean to go back fully into this conversation, but this is what I was trying to talk about with the formation of super teams. I think before super teams became a big thing, what the Raptors are right now could be a finals team. I think they could make it pretty easily. They have the best bench in the league right now, or at least this season they did. Maybe in the future they won't. But
the Raptors should be able to make the finals.
I agree.
That's the thing. But they get to a certain point and they falter back to what their 2-star players continue doing. And I think Serge Ibaka puts them on the same level as a super team because he's really good defensive. He's one of the best defensive players in the league. I think if he was more of 3 years ago Thunder Serge Ibaka rather than right now Serge Ibaka, that would be entirely different. He was on the Magic. I forgot about that. I forgot that happened. But I'm saying they should be able to make the finals with this team, but coaching looks incompetent after a certain point. DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry falter when it comes to clutch games in the playoffs. And they're a finals team that can't make it to the finals.
I don't think that argument works. And I just want to say, if you're going to call the Raptors a super team because of Serge Ibaka, I think your standards might be a little low for a super team. When I think super team, I think the Warriors. That's basically like the superest of all super teams.
Yeah. There's no really arguing that point.
I think the Warriors are the best super team, and there's a few super teams below them, and I think the Raptors barely make it in because they have Serge Ibaka, and their starting lineup is really good.
It's good, yeah. Why can't it be just a good regular old NBA good lineup? It doesn't have to be a super team.
Right, it is a good NBA lineup, but I think their lineup's not good enough to win the finals. I think they're good enough to make it towards the finals. But I think their incompetent coaching and the falter of their players is what eventually dooms them. And they've had the same players and coaches for the past 4 years.
Well, it's a good thing that Dwayne Casey's gone.
I don't think Dwayne Casey should have been fired. I think DeMar DeRozan's gone anyway at this point right now. And I think if they'd kept Dwayne Casey, he could have implemented the offense that they had the rest of the season without DeMar DeRozan faltering towards that iso ball that he ended up doing in the playoffs, which cost them basketball games. And I think that would have helped a lot. And I think Dwayne Casey would have kept his job.
I just don't think that Kyle Lowry is a good enough scorer to put the Raptors over the top. It's just not good enough when you have to go against LeBron. It just isn't. And it's hard to beat LeBron, clearly, because he makes it to the finals almost every season. But Kyle Lowry just isn't that guy that's going to put you over the top. Now, some of it is on DeMar DeRozan, too. But part of me just feels like a lot of it is just the team just isn't good enough. And it's hard because when you have... Even if they made it to the finals, they would still lose by a lot.
I think any team in the East that makes it to the finals is going to lose to the Western Conference for the next 2 years.
That's my problem.
Mm-hmm. But see, it's not that you could build a team in the East that could could beat them. That's what you're trying to do if LeBron goes to Philly.
But the fact that the Warriors have made that necessary is what I don't like about the league. I like the Warriors like individually, but what it means for the entire NBA, it just means we're basically waiting out until they're done.
But you have to think
Unless
about
the Celtics pan out.
right.
True.
But all they did was build a dynasty. They drafted a bunch of players. And they drafted Kevon Looney, and they drafted a bunch of these bench guys, signed a few bench guys, and signed a superstar, one of the best players, in the number 2 player in the league, and probably one of the going to end up being in the Hall of Fame.
I think it's
one of the
okay
best
to
players
call
of all
Kevin
time.
Durant a legend.
A legend. They signed a legend.
Agreed.
Okay, they signed a legend, and they weren't trying to. They weren't like, let's build a super team. They were like, let's win titles to build a to have a dynasty. That's all it is.
Yeah, I realize it's kind of ironic that I'm here campaigning against super teams because we're Chicago fans. If I was living back in the Jordan days, if I was a fan of another team, I'd probably be just as upset as I am now.
Exactly. I mean, that's the thing. Jordan back then stopped guys from winning rings, and Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green right now are going to stop guys from getting rings. And I think if Chris Paul ends his career without a ring, it'll look just like Charles Barkley and John Stockton and Karl Malone.
But I don't think the difference. There is a difference though, because Jordan didn't go, "Hey Hakeem, join my team." Like,
I mean,
or
it's
"Hey
not like
Shaq,
Jordan didn't-
join my team."
It's not like Jordan didn't campaign for other players to
He only
join him.
campaigned for one player reportedly, and that's Dennis Rodman. And all they did was go to his house and say, "Hey, do you want to come play for us with Phil Jackson?" That's literally the only player he's ever recruited.
That's the opposite of what I just heard today. I heard that Jordan did not want Rodman on the team and that he hated him. That's what I heard today. It's not like Jordan didn't... Like, on the Team USA team, there's no possible way Michael Jordan was not like, "Hey, guys, yeah, you want to play for us? I mean, you can. You can if you want, but you don't have to." And I think that's campaigning for other guys. Like, Derrick Rose didn't do that, and that's the reason Chicago didn't get players. And I think that it's okay, because I don't even think the Warriors, like Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, were like, hey, come over here. It was more of the Warriors owner going to Kevin Durant and be like, "Hey, you win titles, you become more of a legend, you instantly implement yourself into the conversation." That's it.
See, I just know that to be factually not true, because one of the biggest stories after the Warriors beat the Thunder was literally the day it happened. Draymond called KD from the parking lot, said, "Hey, come join us."
I didn't say Draymond, I said Steph and Clay.
But also going back to what you said about Michael Jordan, I actually know it's true that he didn't, because it's been said by like actual sports analysts, like on the record, that have been that were close with Michael Jordan, and people within the offices of the Bulls management during that whole time period, that Jordan never asked anybody in management to get him more help, because Jordan felt that he could do it all by himself. And he did get more help, but he did not ask anyone for it.
Jordan repeatedly tried to get coaches and GMs fired because they weren't doing what he asked. That's like reports, facts. He repeatedly tried to get coaches fired before Phil Jackson got there.
That sounds a little like LeBron to me.
Yeah,
Which is what people, when LeBron got David Blatt fired a few years ago, people were like, Michael never did that, and Michael did exactly that.
What coaches? Because I don't know. I've never heard that.
Pre-Phil Jackson, Jordan went to the front office and was like, "Hey, I don't like this. I don't like the way I'm being played. I don't like the way the offense is running. I want something new."
There's a difference, though, between asking
he was campaigning to get a coach fired.
There's a difference, though, between asking for a new coach and asking for the second best player in the league. Like, and asking, that's what I'm saying. There is a really big difference, because coaches do help a lot. But at the same time, it's like Brad Stevens, right, is one of the best coaches in the league, but he couldn't figure out LeBron. And that's what I'm saying. So, like, imagine if LeBron was like, "Yo, KD, want to come play in Cleveland?" And then KD comes and plays in Cleveland.
What's wrong with that?
That's exactly what just happened with the Warriors.
I don't find anything wrong with that, because they're not doing it as a main point of like, "Hey, let's destroy the league, let's do all this." They're doing it as a form of, "Hey, I want to play with you. let's play together, which is exactly why the banana boat within the next 2 years is going to be a thing. Melo's going to end up. I think they're all going to end up playing together. I think it'll happen before they retire.
On the Rockets?
Yeah, like legitimately, that might be a thing. Melo off the bench and Dwayne Wade off the bench.
It's possible.
I don't mean to get too speculative. I was just totally forgot what I was thinking. Yep.
All right. Well, you can't get speculative. You don't say anything.
I hate when that happens.
But I'm just thinking, if it had been more around back then, where you had more money to sign players back then, because it was a big thing about signing multiple stars to a team was teams didn't have enough money to do it.
I don't know if that was the case because Michael. I almost said LeBron. Michael only got paid like $3 million for a long time.
Yeah, and I'm saying teams, that was a lot of money for teams, and that took up a lot of cap space. And I'm thinking they didn't have enough money to sign other guys besides that.
I remembered what I was thinking. With regards to building super teams, what KD did joining the Warriors and being recruited that way, I don't have a moral problem with it. Like, it's totally KD's prerogative. I think he gets shit on too much for that, actually. Like, people say, oh, KD's a snake. He did it to get rings. I don't see a problem with that. That's his prerogative to win rings. It's not his job to put out a competitive league for us. It's his job to get paid and get rings. So I think he gets shit on too much for that. My issue is what it actually means for the product. I don't put any blame on KD for it, but it makes the product worse for fans of other teams.
What I'm thinking is, you saw the way the Rockets competed with the Warriors this year, right? If the Rockets add a piece, they're going to compete even harder with the Warriors. And you have to think about, look at the way the rest of the West was after the Rockets and Warriors, how it was like a battle for 3 through 8. That's exciting. That's exciting basketball.
It is. This year was great with Western playoffs.
And I think the Eastern playoffs was actually kind of close to that, too. The Western playoffs had some of the lowest wins-losses in the past few years. Like the Spurs were under 60 for the first time in 15 years or something.
Under 50.
Under 50?
Yeah.
Was it? Okay, under 50. That would be crazy. 60. Under 50 for the first time in 15 years. And, like, you have to think that even made competition better. Mm-hmm. And I think having two teams out on top and the rest fighting for it shows some really good basketball. And then those teams still have a chance to beat the Warriors. I still think there's teams who can beat the Warriors.
I wholeheartedly disagree.
I think the Rockets could have beat the Warriors. I think the Pelicans can beat the Warriors. I think certain teams, once they develop more, can beat the Warriors. And I think the Cavs shouldn't have made it to the finals this year, and it would have changed it up. I think there's always the possibility, because anything can happen in professional sports.
But there aren't enough teams to have, like, 8 super teams. There aren't enough players, to have 8 super teams.
I mean, if you look now, there's almost about 8 super teams.
No, there is not.
Your definition of a super team is way lower than mine.
Yeah.
There's 3 real super teams. I count the Rockets in the 3 like superior super teams. Rockets, Warriors, and I guess you can count the Cavs because they have LeBron.
I thought you were going to say the Celtics. That would make more sense to me.
And I think four then, and the Celtics. Because, once you have LeBron, adding one other guy who's close to a superstar makes it a super team.
I disagree. I think it's just Superman.
Yeah, that's it.
Kevin Love's still an all-star. He was on the all-star team.
Yeah, I would say
He's
LeBron,
not Kevin Durant, though.
The LeBron, Steph. Kyrie, Love, I could call that a super team. But without Kyrie, nah.
I think they're going to sign if LeBron stays, they sign somebody else and it turns into a real super team.
Yes.
I think as of right now, though, I still consider them a super team on the level of the other teams because they still made it to the finals. The 4 teams who made the conference finals and finals, those are the 4 super teams.
It just seems like a little backwards logic to me. I don't think you're a super team because you make the finals. I think in most cases you make the finals because you're a super team. But the Cavs are the exception to that. They made the finals because LeBron, not because Kevin Love, who was out for Game 7.
Yeah, but Kevin Love was really important to them getting there.
Yeah, and the Celtics, if they would have made it, were not a super team. This season, they would not be a super team. Next season, yes.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, just because you make it to the finals, those 2 teams are not super teams. So that means that just because you make it to the finals doesn't make you a super team. The Rockets, however, their really 2 main weapons are Chris Paul and James Harden, Eric Gordon did show out a lot. But who would say that Eric Gordon is the piece that turns a team into a super team?
If you're going to say that piece is Clint Capella, but I think I just have a really high standard because I don't think CP3, Harden, Capella makes a super team.
No.
They just make a really good team, and it doesn't have to be anything more than that.
Capella's one of the better centers in the league. I think he's top 5 centers in the league right now.
Disagree.
Oh.
What's your top 5 then?
I think he hits 5 to 7 because there's still iffy area.
Yeah, that's
number
fair.
1 and number 2 are Anthony Davis and DeMarcus Cousins, interchangeable. Then Karl Anthony Towns is 3 or 4. Joel Embiid is 3 or 4. They're like interchangeable.
Joel
also,
Embiid's definitely way better than Karl Anthony Towns.
I totally disagree with you.
Ooh.
I 100% disagree with you.
Man, you
I'm
must
a
be
big-
bad at evaluating basketball.
I'm a big defense fan, so I might think I'm biased towards Embiid, but Embiid still has a really great offensive game.
He has way more moves that he utilizes on a way better level.
But Karl Anthony Towns is more versatile in the fact that he's the NBA, he's the unicorn. I don't think Joel Embiid is one of those unicorns like Kristaps Porzingis and Karl Anthony Towns. Joel Embiid is very, very good. If his three-point shooting improves, he is one of those. But Joel Embiid and Karl Anthony Towns are the 2 best young centers in the NBA currently. I think they're very close, and that's why they're interchangeable at 3 and 4.
I don't personally agree with this,
Yeah.
but I've seen some people take Jokic over Cat.
Oh, Jokic is in my top 10. He's not in my top 7.
The thing is with Kat is that he is a really good player, but what he could be, because you're right, he is a very versatile player, and he should be doing better than what he does. And it's not his fault. I think it's his coach's fault that he hasn't been able to get the development that he should get. But at the same time, I feel like what Joel Embiid has shown in the time he has played is that his game is a lot more polished than I hate calling him Cat. Karl Anthony Towns is. It's just like I've seen him get muscled, and you know who's never gonna get muscled? Joel Embiid. Who's muscling Joel Embiid? Nobody. Karl Anthony Towns constantly has trouble scoring in the post against players he should not have trouble scoring in the post against. And I saw this in the Rockets series so many times.
I think Karl Anthony Towns is he doesn't want to be the defensive stopper, and he doesn't want to be any bigger than he is.
He doesn't have to be a defensive stopper. He just has to have average defense.
He has I will admit, Joel Embiid is far better at defense. I believe Karl Anthony Towns is the better scorer, passer, and at sometimes rebounder even. Which that's hard to say because Embiid is bigger and stronger. I don't think Cat wants to be any bigger than he is. He has to be able to run up and down the floor the way he does right now to get the points he has.
Okay, Tom Thibodeau.
Cat is the better player. He's not being utilized correctly.
Cat is the better player than Embiid.
Yes, Cat is the better player. He's not being utilized correctly. I love both of them. Don't get me wrong.
In whatever system that you want to run, maybe. I just feel no. That's fine. If that's your opinion, that's your opinion. But I just feel like Joel Embiid has potential to be on a whole other level.
He's gonna win Defensive Player of the Year. Like just getting that out there.
And I think that Kristaps Porzingis, if healthy, I would take him over Karl Anthony Towns just because he's shown more consistency. He has shown a lot more consistency.
My God. Did you really just say that?
Yeah, because he's shown a lot more consistency. But he's plays a lot more aggressive game, and Karl Anthony Towns falters under the moment multiple times. He gets afraid.
More consistency.
What are you going to say because he got injured he wasn't consistent?
No. That's not what I'm going to say. I'm going to say Karl Anthony Towns came into this league and averaged 22 points, 12 rebounds, and 6 assists or so. Like, he came to this league, won that Rookie of the Year outstandingly over someone else who was drafted in the same class. You want to know who that player is? Kristaps Porzingis.
I understand what you're saying. I'm with you, Phil, on this. I would take Towns over Porzingis, but just with regards to your argument, an average stat line doesn't show how consistent he is. It just shows
but
what
I'm
he
saying
put up.
Porzingis' first season in the league wasn't that good.
It doesn't matter about your first season in the league. It just matters about how you develop.
He developed into the next season, right? He averaged about 6 to 7 more points a game, but Towns also averaged 4 to 5 more points a game, and that took him from 21 to 25 or 26, and that's a big stat. He was shooting at a better percentage, better percentage, more rebounds, more assists. He showed that he was more consistent. He played more games those 2 seasons, and I think it just makes the most sense.
Yeah, just want to get those stats out there. Towns' first season, he averaged 18.3, and then he improved to 25.1. So it's a good point.
I was overshooting his rookie season, but I mean he still averaged 25.1.
Look at Kristaps Porzingis surrounding and supporting cast, and look at Karl Anthony Towns. Who do you think has more people surrounding them? Who do you think has more? Whenever someone plays the Knicks, who's the focus? Who's the focus of who's getting guarded?
Who was the focus of Karl Anthony Towns' of the Timberwolves his first 2 seasons in the league? Who was their focus on
Was it
defense?
Andrew Wiggins there?
And what was Andrew Wiggins doing? Shooting bad and not playing well enough.
Okay, but who is on the Knicks?
Kristaps Porzingis and the Kristaps Porzingis' first season was shrouded by Carmelo Anthony and Derrick Rose. His second season was shrouded by other players being able to were scoring more, being better at the current time. I think he's the better player than them, but I'm saying they were taking over comparatively.
I actually think your point might be working against you, Brandon.
Yeah, me?
Because Towns and Porzingis have had relatively similar stats so far, but Towns have been just slightly better. And when you take that in the context of the fact that Porzingis has been the number 1 man on his team, Towns necessarily hasn't, but Towns is still producing better. That might point to Towns being even more consistent.
But the thing is that, like, when you're looking at Kristaps Porzingis, though, it is a big difference because it is easier to get better, but when you add more players to your team that can score, it's going to make it more, I guess, like a lot easier for you to score. Whereas Kristaps Porzingis by himself still has everybody watching him, and while Karl Anthony Towns doesn't. And so it's like you look at that stuff, and it's like Kristaps Porzingis has so much more responsibility on his team, and part of me just feels like this. This is the only reason. I don't love looking at stats to judge players. I like watching them and seeing who's good. That's how when I was looking before this season, I thought Donovan Mitchell was going to be very good because I watched him play, and he looked like he could play. Not because of any numbers he puts up.
Mm-hmm.
He put up. I just look at how someone plays. And the way Karl Anthony Towns plays is a very weak game, which is crazy because Kristaps Porzingis looks like he plays a stronger game, but he looks weaker than Karl Anthony Towns, which dumbfounds me. So part of me feels this way. The reason why I like Kristaps Porzingis better is because he utilizes himself better. Karl Anthony Towns does himself a disservice because he could be the big man. Why is he afraid of the big man? Why is he afraid to be that? Why is he afraid to be a defensive? No, because you said this. He doesn't want to be the defensive stopper. You don't need players like that. You need players who want to be the defensive stopper, who want to be the big man when they are the big man.
I never said he was afraid to be the defensive stopper or afraid to be the big man. That's not the type of game he grew up playing.
So?
That's not the type of game he wants to play. His body is slender. He's able to dribble better than most.
Then Kristaps Porzingis is?
Yeah. Look at them compared, like sizes and everything. They're both slender, but Karl Anthony Towns is a little skinnier because he's weaker. He's not as strong.
No, Porzingis is definitely
He's
skinnier.
way skinnier.
I really disagree right now.
They weigh 5 pounds difference, and Porzingis is 3 inches taller.
Yes.
But Towns doesn't want to bulk up. There's a lot of NBA players who don't want to bulk up.
Well, it's a problem if you don't want to get better. It's a problem if you're saying, I never played like this, so I don't want to play like this because when I was a kid, I never had to have this responsibility. And so I'm just here, and I just want to be the same player as I've always been and not get better and develop. No. I don't need that on my team.
I'm not saying Karl
trade his ass if that's the problem.
Listen. I'm not saying Karl Anthony Towns doesn't want to get better.
I know he does.
He's not trying to be a defensive stopper. The league is moving away from that.
He doesn't have to be a notable defensive stopper. Like I said, he just has to have average defense.
He still needs to
He's
improve.
nowhere near that right now.
Nowhere.
I think he needs to improve. He's going to improve defensively. But what you were saying about him fearing being the big man and fearing being a
said that.
defensive...
He didn't want to be it. That
I
sounds
said he
like-
doesn't want to be that. I'm not saying he's fearing it. I'm saying he doesn't want to be that because that's not the game he plays. In college, the system he ran didn't have him being a big man down in the post. That's what the NBA is moving away from, and that's why he's not really trying to be that.
But that's what Tom Thibodeau wants him to be in his system, so why doesn't he be that?
Because Tom Thibodeau's coaching his butt.
One-dimensional players like that don't last very long in the NBA. You
I
have
don't-
to be willing to adapt.
I don't consider, but he did adapt. That's the point.
How so?
Yeah.
Defensively, he hasn't adapted.
No,
to that.
not at
Defensively,
all.
no. And I think he still has growing to do there. But offensively, he adapted to the NBA game so well that he's one of the best young players in the league because he's able to score and rebound at a higher rate, and he's more efficient shooting than a lot of young players. And he's the player. He's a different kind of player than what we're used to in an NBA big. Because that's what the league was going towards. When you see Dwight Howard's been shooting more threes the past 3 years, that's because all of the other big men around him who are being drafted are shooting more threes per year. And when you saw Pau Gasol move out of the paint when he came to Chicago, that's because bigs were starting to shoot more threes every year. And I'm thinking that in the long run, it makes more sense for Karl-Anthony Towns to improve on defense but not become the defensive stopper. I'm not saying he's fearing it. I'm saying that's not what the league needs him to be.
So, this might be my last point about this. I don't want anyone on my team who says, I don't care about being a defensive stopper, because every single person should want to be a defensive stopper on your team, because defense, I mean, I know you need to score points to win, but defense is the most important part of the game. Just look at the Rockets. The Rockets played extremely well against the Warriors because of their defense. Because of their defense, they were getting off the switches so well. And if you're saying I don't think Karl-Anthony Towns believes this. I know you're just saying this talking about him, and I don't think what I said about him is what he feels either. I'm just going off of your argument. I honestly do not believe that Karl-Anthony Towns doesn't want to be a defensive stopper. I really don't. I think Karl-Anthony Towns wants to get better in that aspect of his game. The fact of the matter is he just hasn't. Especially with a coach like Tom Thibodeau breathing down his neck, who's definitely trying to get him better at defense, but he hasn't, which kind of is a little scary when your coach is one of the most defensive-minded coaches in the NBA and you haven't got better at defense. That's what concerns me about Karl-Anthony Towns, is that when you look at Kristaps Porzingis, he has actually improved in every aspect of his game, where Karl-Anthony Towns has not.
I understand everything you're saying. I agree with you for the most part, but I think Phil makes a good point about Towns' style not necessarily being, Towns' style being more accurate to what the NBA is going towards, because in terms of defensive centers, which Towns is definitely not, there are two teams in the finals that aren't really known for their defensive centers.
Yeah, no, and I completely agree with that. In our first episode, when I said that the reason why I don't think the Bulls need Mo Bamba right now is because the wings are what's most important. But you could still win with a defensive center, because look at the Rockets. Clint Capella. I'm just saying that it is possible, and I'm not saying he has to stand under the hoop or anything. I'm just saying it's always good to be good at defense. But going into this finals tonight, because I guess we have to talk about that because it's coming up very soon. I just want to know, what are your opinions on how this first game's going to go?
Well, it's in Golden State, right? It's in Oakland.
Yeah,
They have home court advantage.
I think it's pretty easy to predict that the Warriors are going to win, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. I don't know how the series is going to go. I think most people think the Warriors are going to win it in 5, maybe. I wouldn't be shocked if it goes to 6. What do you think, Brandon?
I think 5. Warriors in 5. I wasn't going to say Warriors just because, if I say 5, there's no way the Cavs are winning it in 5. So, I'm just saying the Warriors, they have too much offensive firepower. The only way that the Cavs win is if the Warriors don't play Warrior defense which against this Cavs team where the Warriors have the speed and the height advantage, I don't know. I just don't see the Cavs being able to pull it off against this Warriors team. They just have scoring and defensive ability just way above the Cavs.
So I have Warriors in 5 total. I think LeBron pulls away and takes a win tonight, though. The one win of the series.
Wow.
Because if you look at the way he played from his last game, he has this big chip on his shoulder from people talking all this smack. He's continued to have this chip on his shoulder all playoffs. I think he could use that chip to even push the series to 6 games, but I think he uses that chip to take away one game right away. Taking home court advantage is such a big thing in this playoffs. LeBron wants it. He's going to take it.
Wow. I mean, for LeBron's sake, I hope he does, but I'm just a little skeptical because this Warriors team, LeBron is great. He's the greatest player of this era. There's no denying that. But this other team has 2 MVPs.
And 2 more All-Stars.
And, well, yeah, I guess, 2 more All-Stars. And they have Sean Livingston. And regardless of what you think of Sean Livingston, I think he's a damn good player.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I don't think he's a bad player. I just don't think he's like we were talking earlier about. I don't think he's like a superstar or he didn't put them over the top.
He can be an important piece without being a star.
He was a very important piece before Kevin Durant got there.
Yeah.
Like he showed that, but now he doesn't get as much as much time to shine, I guess, as he used to because you have Kevin Durant on your team. Obviously, he's going to get a lot more minutes. But yeah. Thanks for listening to the Unbearables podcast today. I'm Brandon Ruiz, and I'm here with
Phil Wood
and Jack Cowart.